The planets are moving, the moon is shifting, and the cosmic climate is speaking. Here's your Astroweather with Laura Francesca. Welcome to the Astroweather, where we tune into the cosmic climate shaping our days, decisions, and destiny. Just as the sky brings shifting seasons on Earth, the heavens also carry their own rhythm. Planetary movements, lunar phases, and celestial alignments that influence the energy around us and within us. In this space, we explore the astrology of the moment, what's unfolding in the sky, what it means for the collective experience, and how we can move through with awareness, wisdom, and intention. So wherever you are in the world, take a breath, drink some water, look up to the stars, and let's step into today's Astroweather together. Hello, everyone. Just having a little fun here at the beginning of the podcast. Bear with me as I am learning the new tools here at Podbean. As you guys can tell, I am newly at Podbean here. And those that have been following me in the past, you guys know I was at Swellcast for about 3 years with about 33,000 visitors and visiting my podcast, and almost about 1,000 podcasts. So expect to hear a lot from me here at Podbean. I'm just getting in the rhythm. So speaking of rhythm, okay, it is hot, and I've been talking about drinking water. So I have my Essentia here, and I know you guys could hear. I'm going to be drinking some water because, when we do a lot of talking for podcasters, we have to drink water. So plus it is so hot. It's been really hot, and it's going to get hotter, okay? And this is why I also talk about the Astroweather, because it doesn't just influence the planets and so forth, also the frequencies. And expect for this year to be really hot, especially with the fire horse that just entered. So, with the fire horse, it's not just a horse that gallops and goes really quick and speeds up, right? And wants truth and honesty, but also is galloping with fire. So a lot of us are noticing, there's a trend that I do a lot of observation. Okay. I look at patterns. I'm a very pattern type of person in every part of my life, not just, family and friends and communities and so forth, but the people in social media. And I've been hearing a lot about people that they're a little bit tired. They don't they don't have as much energy, and that's okay, and that's expected. Don't really stress out yourself and think that you're going to be like a horse and galloping, because even horses need rest. And if your body needs some rest, take a rest. Learn how to take a rest and then get back on your saddle, right? Because, the horse, it can go on and on and on and on and on, but our bodies are not built like a horse. So take your vitamins, drink your water, and so forth. And I've also been doing siestas. This is something brand new I started doing because, we are getting older as well. And so we need to, regularize and regulate our hormones and our nervous system as well, right? And so there's, the thing about these frequencies is that it's brand new for all of us, okay? This has nothing to do with age, okay? This has to do more with, are we able to handle these type of frequencies, okay? Because we've never experienced these type of frequencies, never in our lives, okay? You need to understand that these frequencies that we're going under, or we're experiencing pretty much, are frequencies that goes back to the 18th century, that goes back to the French Revolution, that goes back to the Civil War. These type of energies that we read in books, okay, that we've seen in movies, that, we've heard about in museums or anywhere like that, where there's a lot of history, right? It could be your history teacher that told you about these type of times, right? And so we're now experiencing that, okay? We're experiencing those type of frequencies. And we never experienced them before. So we don't know how to act. We don't know how to react towards it. There's a lot of wars going on, obviously, since, the whole Israel and Iran, which I don't want to talk about because that's been very historical. That's been happening for many, many years. I'm going back to the Bible days. And that is never going to end. It's always going to be, wars about land. And so what is going on right now with Uranus and Taurus? Uranus and Taurus right now is about land and is wrapping up. It's wrapping up to not come back ever again. Okay. So for the past 8 years, okay, we've gone back to the 1930s. Okay, we were living in the 1930s of what it was like, and there was a pandemic. The COVID happened during Uranus and Taurus. Okay, there was I don't know if I think it was the Spanish epidemic or there was the Spanish flu. That's what it was, something like that. I think it was the 1930s or somewhere. It was somewhere around that, but there was these with Uranus and Taurus has to do with real estate. It has to do with business. What happened during COVID? A lot of businesses shut down. Okay, a lot of businesses shut down. A lot of mom and pop, you know, businesses, they shut down. They couldn't afford it. There's been a lot of building of real estate, construction and demolishing and then bringing back up. And that's what Uranus and Taurus has meant. Okay. And anything to do with now I'm hearing social media. Now it's going to be about social media. Yeah. Now there is going to be that Uranus in Gemini. I believe it enters next month. When speaking of social media, and there's is that a helicopter? I don't know. I kind of hear a helicopter. There's a lot of noise happening in my community, but anyway, helicopters is very air, very, very. I'm hearing the word international. See, this is why I like doing podcasts because I'm very tapped into other worlds, and I hear a lot of. Oh no, that was not a. Okay, that was a motorcycle. It was not a helicopter, and it was my neighbor. So what's going on is that I heard international. So maybe there's going to be a lot of international things going on. When Uranus goes in Gemini, it's going to be about social media. It's going to be about people. It's no longer going to be about the hierarchy. It's no longer going to be about religion and the church. That's what Taurus was about. It was about Catholicism. It was about the Pope. There was a new Pope. There was a Pope that died, and then a new Pope replaced it, right? And so there's been change in the Vatican as well. A lot of drama as well, right? And so families also rules marriages and stuff. It's been a very shake up earthquake type of when it comes to families, when it comes to marriages. Some marriages got divorced. Some marriages just got separated. Some marriages probably came together. And it was about working your marriage, and having to rebuild, right? And as we're wrapping up Uranus and Taurus, we're saying goodbye to the past 8 years, okay, of what it has meant. And so as we enter Gemini, it's going to be more about social media. It's going to be more about people. It's going to be more about communication. Okay. It's great for brands. Okay. If you're building a brand, if you're building a business, it's great because you need people on your side, right? You need people to buy your services. You need people to buy your products and so forth. And using social media for that. There's AI now, right? And Uranus and Gemini gets along very well with Pluto and Aquarius. They trine. They're both heirs and they're both BFFs. Okay. So they get along really well. And, Pluto's going to be helping Uranus with communication and so forth, but also Pluto and Aquarius, it rules the French Revolution, right? And so we're repeating these patterns of the past, historical things that had happened in the past. So I just wanted to talk a little bit on that before I jump into the chart here, which interesting, let me refresh it. The moon is in Aquarius, okay? And so as you can feel the air around us, it's not so stuck or so about rules. We feel a little bit more liberated. We feel a little bit more free, a little bit more communicative. Having to teach, what I'm doing, I like to think that, I talk about the Astroweather and so forth. But I think also at the same time, I'm teaching you guys as well for those that are not familiar with astrology, right? And by listening to me weekly, you get to understand it and you get to learn more. So you're also learning by listening to the episodes, okay? And those that do know astrology, you know what I'm talking about, right? But I would hope so. So the moon is in Aquarius. It is transiting the 3 degree that has to do with communication. So anything that has to do with Aquarius has to do with teaching, has to do like universities, it has to do with higher education. So is Sagittarius. Sagittarius rules the gurus, but Aquarius is more intellect, it's more the professors and so forth. And Sagittarius is more like the gurus, the international gurus, and so forth. But when the moon is transiting Aquarius, we're feeling rebellious. As you can tell, there was a motorcycle that just did not care. It just went really loud and it was ready to go. So it left. But when the moon is in Aquarius, it is about taking trips, going on a plane, going on a helicopter. It is about communication right now, jumping into some sort of communication. And let me look at it is conjuncting Pluto. So it's a very powerful time right now as the moon conjuncts Pluto in the sign of Aquarius. It is about, and for me, it's perfect, because I got Jupiter in Aquarius, okay, at 4 degrees. So it's making a very close conjunction here. So it's a perfect time for me to speak, especially because maybe that's why I'm getting a lot of downloads. Okay. Also because Pluto is here as well. And it is, hang on one second here. Okay. Sorry about that. It's just, I don't like any noise in here. So I had the door open because it was hot, and I even have my fan off just because I don't like the noise. But, there's people entering, so I had to go close the door. So anyway, the moon is conjuncting Pluto. So it's a very powerful time right now. And let me look at the house here where the moon is right now is in the 6th house of service. Okay. The 6th house of health. And the phrase there is I adapt. Okay. So the 6th house has anything to do with our work, our health, our habits, our employments. It could be servants, pets, anything where you are of service to your community. It has to do with your routine. Your routine matters. And also the clothes that we wear and how we wear it, okay, is also your hygiene, your interest in food, your diet, the type of food you eat, and so forth. And any condition with your health also is linked to that, to the 6th house. And also our attitude towards work, sharpening our skills, and the ability to use the mind in practical ways, okay? It has to do with responsibilities as well, okay, the 6th house. It is the bread and butter. It is the family person that pretty much, I would say it's the ambassador, okay? It rules 6 degrees as well. And it is, for those also, if we're talking about numerology, life path 6, I also am a 6. I'm a 33-6. And it is the bread and butter, is the one responsible for the family, the one that takes charge and so forth. And or everything comes down on the 6th light path, that if they get into some kind of situation, they got to bail them out, or they got to, do whatever it takes, to rescue the family. Okay. It's the bread and butter. So it's very important, the 6th house. I actually have a 6th house stellium whole house. And when I say whole house is because it's according to a system. But if it's not whole house, I have it in 2 placements, the 6th house and, the moon and Uranus. So it's pretty important there because it is about my emotions and how I feel about being of service, and also my health, right? My health has to be in good standing in order for me, to be able to be of service. It also rules nurses, okay? So especially if you have it in retrograde, maybe in the past you were a nurse. And I actually have Uranus in retrograde. So something about the past, and that's where I have it in the 6th house of nurses and hospitals and so forth. So anyway, this is where the moon is, where we are having our feelings right now. It's so interesting because today, my neighbor, he brought in the McDonald's breakfast. Okay. He's a really nice old man. He sometimes just, he's a loner, those old men that are really alone and stuff, and very friendly. He's my dad's friend and he's very friendly to us and everything. So sometimes once in a while he'll bring in food or something like, oh, hey, I just, wanted to drop off this food. So today it was McDonald's breakfast, like 2 pancakes and some eggs and bacon there. And so I was like, oh, I guess my mom opened the door, like, oh, thank you, this and this. And so then that happened, and then an hour later, here comes my dad with some pupusas. So a lot of food was coming in, and I was just like, "Whoa." So that could be the sixth house. It could be over the top, okay? Because when the moon and Pluto come together, it can be very indulging, okay? Very empowering, okay? Because Pluto is about empowering, it's about power. And the moon is how you feel, right? And, it's interesting. Aquarius has to do with community. Okay. It's your community and it's on my Jupiter. Right now, it's transiting on my Jupiter. So Jupiter is over the top. It could be like, it's like, oh, now this and now that. And I'm grateful for it. And don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining about it because I know what it means to not have food. I've gone through some very difficult times when I was younger, in my hometown where there was not enough food. And to have now too much food, it's something to be grateful about, right? But, it was interesting. And now that I'm looking at the astrology, I'm like, aha, no wonder, So it had something to do with my Jupiter. And I'm like, I love food. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do love food, but I would love money more. I'm at the point right now that I'm just like, money could be much more better for me than food. I am trying to lose weight and so forth like that, but I'm not going to reject food. I mean, I'll just give it to my mom or have them eat, my mom or my dad. But sometimes, you don't want to be rude, because then they get their feelings hurt. And it's like, what do you mean you're not gonna eat food? And so I'll just eat a little bit, but I'll eat it later, you know? So anyway, so that is where the moon is transiting. It has to do with your local environment as well. And it has to do with your neighbors, tenants, anything like people you work with, people that are being of service, they want to feed you, they want to bring in food and so forth. And what it's doing here, the moon, is that that's interesting. See, this is why I love astrology. The moon is making a sextile to Saturn. And so what does that mean? The moon is making an opportunity with the planet Saturn. Saturn rules old people. Okay. It rules like senior citizens, much more older people. And so there we go. That's my neighbor, which he's an old man. And there's an opportunity to connect with older people or even billionaires or people with a lot of wealth because that's what rules Saturn, okay? They might have a little bit more than you do and they want to help you out, or they just want to be of service or they want to be generous or something. So notice right now any older people that you run into, it could be a father figure, a mother figure, anybody that's older than you that wants to help you out, let them help you. If it's something good, of course. It could be also the military, the cops. It could be anybody that's in service that serves and protects, okay? Also, the moon in Aquarius, it is making a trine to Uranus, and Uranus is a planet of shocks, the planet of, oh my gosh. It could be something like, us receiving food, like, oh, okay. Well, that's surprising. You brought some food, like, okay, and we just receive it because we were not expecting our neighbor to bring in some McDonald's breakfast. But I kind of joked on in X and I said, oh, I feel like we got a butler. you know, we were not expecting it, but that could be an example of Uranus. So in your life, it could be, I don't know, you might want to play the lottery, play a scratcher or something, and oh, you won $50. mailbox or something, or some kind of message that arrives to you that's unexpected, okay? And it pertains to real estate. It pertains to your home. It pertains to community. And, for us, like I mentioned, it could be that old man, right? Because he came knocking on the door into our home, right? Uranus is in Taurus. That has to do with real estate. So that could have been like where we got shocked, like, oh, okay. It's not like a big shocker, but, we were not expecting no McDonald's food. So another thing too that's happening is that the moon is making an opportunity with Neptune. Okay. Neptune is a planet of the ocean. It has to do with manifestation. It has to do with God as well, because that is where blessings can come in, but blessings that you don't see. Okay. Blessings that are hidden, and they might seem a little bit foggy, and maybe sometimes, the way God works though is like he doesn't like to reveal everything. God is very mysterious, and he doesn't like to reveal everything, and he put us through tests, right? To see if we have what it takes, to be that leader, to be responsible, to, do. And so he's not going to tell you everything. If you really, for those that are Christian, if you really think about Jesus, in the Bible, he had his 12 disciples. And every time that he storytelled, right? And he tried to teach, and which is so interesting, right? Because he had a moon in Aquarius. And it's interesting because, he was a teacher, a master teacher. And he talked about finance. The majority of topics in the Bible is all about finance, okay? Money was very important to Jesus. And a lot of it is because I did study his chart, and he had Jupiter and Pluto in the second house and Saturn also in the second house. So he had a lot second house of wealth, of money, in the one of the most important planets ever, right? Especially if you have Jupiter in the second house, that's a little rare. There are people that do have it. I have seen charts, but I was not born with Jupiter in second house, but that is like really abundant. I actually have Saturn. So with Saturn is more, it takes longer. It's more stressful because there's huge responsibility, okay, when you have Saturn in the second house. But once you learn that, all of a sudden, all of it comes in, okay? But you have to pass the test. You have to pass certain tests, and that's how Saturn works. You got to be responsible. And now here comes all this money out all at once, okay? And that's the reward that God gives to us once we pass the test. And it actually happens during middle age, okay? So if you're like if you're like 19, 20, 21, and you do have Saturn in the second house, it's going to take you a long time to get money. You're going to have to go through a lot of tests, okay? And then you will get your money, but maybe when you're like 45 or somewhere around there, middle age, or even 40 or something like that. So, it's interesting, but when it comes to Neptune, but I was talking about Jesus, he gave a lot of parables, stories, and he didn't give you everything, He didn't tell you, yeah, this is how you get to this, to that, this, no. No, he spoke like very minimal. And then they would ask him questions like, well, Master, what do you mean about this? Right? I think Peter was the one that always used to ask him. He was like pretty rebellious. And Jesus like, well, I don't know. Think about it. Think about what I just said. He would not give everything out. He was very Scorpio, very mysterious like that as well. Very Plutonian. And also Neptune. And this is why I'm talking about that, because Neptune does not reveal. Okay. Neptune is the hidden waters. Okay. That's underneath, that you don't know what's underneath the waters. Actually, the waters can be pretty scary. A lot of people say that, a lot of people don't really fear Neptune. They fear more like Pluto or Saturn. But I think Neptune is a planet that some people, not that you have to fear it, but you have to be aware of Neptune, because Neptune can drown you, okay? Look at what happens when they just go down, right? People that can't swim, they drown, right? Some of them, even if you're the greatest swimmer, right? If you're a surfer, there are some surfers that have died on the water. The Titanic, you know? And, it's so interesting. The Titanic is very mysterious because I don't know what is down there, but the people that have tried to go down there and see what is left behind, or what is the frequency where the Titanic sank. They say that once you go down there, like, you're gonna run into some evil spirits, or just, I don't know what's down there, entities, or you're not allowed to go down there, in other words. And it's a museum that's just underneath the water, and a lot of things are there. You cannot, it's illegal. You can't go down there. Or maybe a lot of bad things had happened. People that are trying to be nosy and see what's going on. I mean, look at it. What was the ocean something? I forgot the name of that ship. It was a little boat, and when they had some millionaires that went, they try to go down there. I think it's ocean something. So that man that owned that company with that ship and invited people to go along with him to see what's going on in the Titanic. Let's all go dive in down there in my boat, right? And they had like little cameras you know, and alarms and all this other stuff, gadgets, and they fell for it. They went on that trip. I don't know. Some people said it was intentional. Maybe that's how the man wanted to die. He didn't care if he died that way. Of trying to excavate and trying to see what happened with the Titanic. But unfortunately, the other wealthy people that were there, I think one of them was from Pakistan and the son, or they were from India or something like that, or Asia. I don't remember. But, they all passed away in the water. And so that could have been something where it's like, keep out, keep out. You cannot come down the water, right? But there were rebels, and they decided to go check out the Titanic, and they all died. So, those are just some examples, that Neptune can be, what does Neptune bring? It brings tidal waves, it brings tsunamis, right? And unexpected tsunamis that, have killed people and so forth. And so it's very unknown, it's very unknown Neptune. But the moon right now is making an opportunity with Neptune, okay? With the beach, with the lakes, with the ocean. And Neptune just entered Aries, okay? So there might be some combative hurricanes that might happen for the next, I think it's 14 years in Neptune. I think it's every 14 years. So we're on for a long ride, okay, here with Neptune and Aries. And it's not going to go back to Pisces. That's it. It already left Pisces. It was in its home, but now in Aries, it, is going straight full throttle. So we're going to be hearing a lot of maybe hurricanes, fires, in combination with the ocean and so forth. And also, ruling the head. Okay. So having to put some of that muscle in your brain, and, strengthen that brain of yours with knowledge, okay, with knowledge and action and boldness and so forth. But right now it's making an opportunity with the moon and Aquarius to get along very well. Okay, Aquarius and Aries, they form an opportunity. So that's interesting there. And I did talk about the conjunction with Pluto that has to do with power. It has to do with resources. Okay. So right now, as it comes together with resources, there's a way that you can make money. Okay. You got to connect with people and so forth. Let me see here. There is, okay. So that is what's happening. So there's something about resources with, let me see here. Yeah, resources with the moon and Pluto when it comes to your local environment. Okay. When it comes to your health. So we can see something like that. Let's see. Aquarius. Let's go to Saturn, because, Saturn's in Aries. Is going to be here for 3 years, and it's going full throttle as well. Okay. No other sign is going to go in there. And it is coming together with Venus. Okay, Venus just entered Aries. So right now, love might feel a little bold, a little bit sexy, a little bit leadership like. Okay, you might probably meet someone maybe through your company, maybe networking, maybe do at events or anything like that. Okay, if you are single and you're looking for someone, that could be something through events or something. At 10 degrees of Capricorn. Okay, so it might have to do with real estate, it might have to do with business or anything like that. Also, so I wanted to look at Saturn. Okay, on here because it is a ruler of Aquarius, the traditional ruler of Aquarius. For those that don't know, Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, but traditionally, okay, before that happened, it was ruled by Saturn. Okay. And some people that study astrology traditionally will go to Saturn instead of Uranus. I actually go to both, you know, both matter. And so, that's why I wanted to look at Saturn. What is going on over here with Aries, right? And it's in the eighth house of transformation. And the motto there is we have. Okay, so the eighth house has everything to do with financial, moral, spiritual, physical support that you receive from other people. Okay, it encompasses anything to do with legacies and trusts, wills, insurance matters, inheritance. Okay, and it is also joint finances, is contracts. It is if you're married, and it also rules divorces as well and separations and deep research and investigation and hidden assets. Because anything that has to do with the eighth house is assets that are hidden. Okay. It could also be hidden riches, okay, that you were not aware of, right? So it's kind of like digging for oil and not knowing there was oil there, right? That could be an example. And then all of a sudden you come into oil like, oh, we didn't even know there was oil here. So that's the eighth house. Okay. Self discovery. Okay, that has to do anything of that. It also has to do like feds and CIAs and like deep research, for those that are in those type of government offices and so forth. Let's see. So that's what's going on with Saturn there, and then it's coming together with Neptune. So there's something going on near the beach, near the ocean, that it's something spiritual as well. Okay. Neptune in Aries coming together with Saturn, something also that has to do with rules, okay? Near the beach, near the ocean. We might hear even at beaches that say, don't swim here because, I don't know, maybe something happened around the beach or something like that, and they'll they'll tape it around there. You can't enter here. We might see something like that. It's just what I'm feeling, okay? And so that's interesting there. Okay. Or there could be an Aries that's being restricted as well. And it has something to do with social media. It has something to do with communication. Okay. Involving some sort of contracts. Okay. With Venus in Aries at the degree of Capricorn. And Capricorn rules real estate. So that's something to look into. And so, yeah, it's especially because it's in the eighth house, it could be loss. Okay. It could be loss. Let me see if Venus is okay. Venus in Aries is in the ninth house. Okay. This one, Venus is in the ninth house. So the ninth house has to do with anything international. Okay. It has to do with I contemplate, I ponder. Okay. Having to think about a decision you're about to make. Okay. And Venus, we know it rules with beauty and love and wealth and self confidence. The ninth house, okay, has to do with the higher mind and your consciousness, as well as religion and philosophy, ideals, ethics, and the institutions that are embodying social concepts, right? Developed by society. So it governs anything with higher learning, teaching, publishing, expansion of one's activity, and the understanding of wisdom and social conscience, and the lessons we learn through living. Okay. So the ninth house is very important when it comes to travel, foreigners, foreign dealings, commerce, import, export, anything that has to do with in-laws, the church, spiritual factors. It's a pretty deep house, the ninth house. I have it in Mars and I have it in the North Node. Okay. So, and I can say, as somebody that has gone through the ninth house, it's not the, you would think, it's ruled by Jupiter and it's expansive, very religion and so forth. But understanding the ninth house, understanding Jupiter is not always in your favor. Okay. You have to adapt yourself and be in that ninth house frequency of having to be alignment with God. Okay. This is having to be in alignment with God and your beliefs. They say that some of the strongest Jupiters are the ones that are in alignment with God. And if you have a relationship with God, in Vedic, it would be like Dharma. But in Western astrology, it's about this alignment with God. And those are the strongest Jupiters they are. And those are the ones that are blessed because of that connection with God, that alignment with God. And a lot of, people that might not feel lucky with Jupiter is because there's a misalignment with God. Okay. You probably have not been faithful with God. You probably have not been committed to God, right? And you live a double life, right? And God says, that's not good for me. That's not good enough. And then you will not get great breaks. Okay. You will get caught doing something undermining that you're trying to do. And then it gets exposed because Jupiter exposes. Okay. It's like an eagle that it will expose from very high, okay, in the sky. So, the ninth house is very important. That's where Venus is at in Aries, okay? That's where Venus at the degree of Capricorn, okay, of stability and rules. And it's coming together with Saturn, okay? Saturn, we know, is about rules, right? About responsibility, about discipline. Okay. And I don't have to tell you guys that. You guys already know about, when we're talking about discipline and the things and that matter to God and the rules that you have to follow, okay, in order for you to live a blessed life. So it's very Aries here. I mean, I'm glad it got off Pisces, okay? It's been in Pisces for the past 3 years and it has really aged us. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I don't know. I'm doing everything right now to, you know, be at my best, look at my best, right? I'm always someone, I think even when I'm older, much, much older, I'm always gonna be, like, putting facial creams, and I don't believe in surgery, but I do believe in anti-aging creams and so forth like that, or just doing natural things, aging gracefully, where you can also do some clean eating. I know when I was a vegetarian in Arizona, I just l I think it was like, instead of getting older, I was getting younger. And I was like, I think I erased like 10 years off of me or something because I became vegetarian, right? And so when I became vegetarian in Arizona, I was just eating nothing but organic food. And my hair was so shiny, it was so shiny. My body, well, I was losing weight, a lot of weight because, it was so hot over there and humid in Arizona. But I was also working out. I was doing hiking on a mountain that was right in back of my house. Huge, huge mountain. I think it was called what is it? God, it's been so Mountain High Mountain. I forgot what it was called. And so, but it was just, right, in back of my house, and a lot of people would hike around there, you just had to be careful because there was a lot of snakes and what is it? A lot of snakes and what was it? Scorpions. That's what it was, scorpions. I've never seen scorpion before until I lived in Arizona. And that was because there was when we used to hike, me and my sister, we used to hike, we used to see them there. But it was really hot. And then, you know, my hair was like shiny. I was losing weight and eating really healthy. So I didn't even look my age, and I look 10 years younger. And so there's things that you can do by eating healthier and taking care of your hair and so forth. And of course, we all need good money for that, right? Because organic products do matter and they do cost. But it was things that we were doing like that. There's things like that you can do to look way younger. Because food, what you eat in your body, what you insert in your body, it matters, especially if you're eating like the Bible days. Imagine how they used to eat. There was no MSG. They were just eating beans, lentils, maybe tortillas or bread. I think bread, they tortillas. I don't know about tortillas, but bread, I think they did have like French bread, that kind of bread. If you really look at how they eat, it was basically beans and just like a little bit of bread but none of the food that they sell right now on the supermarkets, okay? But we could make conscious choices I still eat lentils, okay? And beans. I love beans. I didn't used to like beans before. I don't know. I needed to put lemon on there and some chili tapatio, or else I would not eat those beans, okay? My mom used to make me eat like bean burritos and I couldn't eat them. I had to put like lemon inside and chili, and she was like, "Ew, like, why are you doing that?" I'm like, "Because that's the only way I could eat them." I don't know. I didn't like beans before. I don't know what it was. But then I got used to it. Now I love it. There's a bunch of iron and folate on it. And I love eating a big old bowl of kind of like, instead of it being a bowl of tortilla chips. What is it? Tortilla soup, right? I love beans, okay? Homemade beans. And then I just put avocado, a little bit of sour cream on there, some green onions on there, some salsa, and oh my gosh, it tastes so good, right? It has a bunch of iron. So I really love cooking like that. That's going to make me healthy. And they also say that if you eat, what is it? If you eat cactus, okay, my dad loves cactus with eggs, and I don't like cactus, but my dad is the type that he could even cut one of those cactus and then just cook them just wash them and clean them and take all the spikes and stuff and just cook them with eggs. And they say that a lot of Mexicans that eat the cactus with eggs, scrambled eggs, they live longer than others. So there's some anti-aging with cactus, okay? Just in case. They do sell them already cut up in stores in some Hispanic. I know in my local Hispanic market, they have them in bags and they're already cut up in little pieces. So you don't have to be cutting no cactus. But I think those that live in Arizona, and they have a backyard with a cactus on there, and they could cut something like that and and they probably would not know that it's anti-aging. So that's a little tip there. But maybe I should start eating a little bit of it. I don't know. I've never been when I see it, it's all gooey and stuff like, ooh. But I think if you put maybe some salsa or some eggs and stuff, maybe it won't taste so bad. So anyway, there's things that you can do. And why am I talking about, you know, anti-aging and health? And I think it's because of the sixth house. That's where the moon is. That's our emotions. That's what we are thinking about. Maybe we're trying to think of eating more healthy, going to the gym, being of service. How can we be of service? How can we be more generous? How can we do some charity work, right? How can we clean eat? Maybe we want to detox. Maybe we want to cleanse ourselves. Anything like that. That's our emotions there. So basically, I do want to talk real quick here on the Mars Mercury North Node conjunct that is happening right now in Pisces. Okay. That's very important. We still have Mercury in retrograde. It is about to get off Mercury retrograde. So that's going to be good. And, right now it's at 9 degrees of international. Is this partnerships around the world? In the sign of Pisces, okay? This is where we're taking action. Also, as it comes together with the North Node, okay? It is destiny. It is fate. Okay, something fated in the sign of Pisces. It's at 8 degrees of power, 8 degrees of wealth, 8 degrees of joint finances, soul contracts. Okay, and it's very important. Okay, because Mars North Node conjunct, that's fate and destiny, but it's not just fate and destiny. You got to take action, right? You got to take action, and it might be traveling somewhere, you know, and that's the action that was needed, right? Or it might be something to do with something international. Because it's also coming together with Mercury, it might be something to do with communication, social media, okay? And at the degree where Mercury is right now in retrograde, it's at 10 degrees of Capricorn. So there's something about business, okay? And we're talking about the water, and there's something about real estate around the water in retrograde, okay? So this is something that we're going back to the past. We're revisiting the past of what has happened in the past, okay? And I don't know why I'm hearing it's a wrap. I'm hearing it's a wrap. And so there's something about the past, okay, that right now I would not recommend to purchase a house. And the reason I say that is because it's at 10 degrees of Capricorn. That has to do with real estate. But it pertains to the past, okay, something that was done in the past and is being done again. There's a lesson that needs to be learned when you go back to the past and you do the same thing over, right? And so personally, I would not recommend, it's best once it gets off the retrograde and it moves forward, then it's best to move forward with any contract deals or anything like that. I'm hearing keys, something about the keys. Oh boy. And so Mercury coming together with Mars is about taking action, and the North Node is your fate and your destiny. Let me see where Mars is, where it's taking action in the 8th house of transformation. Okay. So there is we have. Okay. So the 8th house has anything to do with legacies, trusts, wills, taxes, insurance matters, deep research, hidden assets, okay, alimony, finances affected by a partner or corporate money, okay? It also has to do with the occult matters and self-discovery. So pretty much joint finances, the 8th house, that's where Mars is. Okay. That's where action is being taken into doing some deep research. Okay. So it's all about research right now. It's not about buying. It is about investigating and researching, before you buy that house. Like it's, for instance, if you buy a house, and the reason I say that is because the 10 degree of Capricorn is in Mercury, okay, in Pisces in retrograde. So, before we purchase a house, you want to do research. You want to do research of the community. You want to know if you're in alignment with it. This is why I highly recommend getting an astrocartography reading or a location, a relocation reading, right? Well, it will tell you there in the environment how aligned you are, because you don't want to buy a house and then all of a sudden you put it back in the market and now you got to go lower. You're not going to sell it at the price you bought it for, or you're just not even going to live in that house. All of a sudden ghosts appear, because I mean that's what happens. I actually lived in a house that had ghosts. We moved into a 4-bedroom with chandelier and everything. It was so beautiful in San Pedro. That was the first house we lived in San Pedro, and it was so beautiful. We fell in love with it. And then I think a couple of years after, we started hearing noises in the house. Okay. Steps in the house. And so there was a lot of things that we could have did to prevent that, but back then I didn't know numerology. Back then I didn't know feng shui. Back then I didn't know astrology. I didn't know, my growth has been so like vast and large, and ever since those days, and now that I'm an astrologer And so it's a benefit for me to know this, but when I see other people, I'm like, "Ugh," you know, like, "Why?" You know? But you know what I mean? Those are the lessons that people go through because they need to master and they need to invest or they need to, get a reading done. So anyway, I wanted to talk about this because there's a lot of Pisces going on right now. Right now is a good time to do take action. I mean, do travel. Just do the research. It is almost going to get off that retrograde. Okay, I think I'm not too sure if it was the 6th. I'm not sure if it's Monday or Tuesday. I haven't actually looked, but I will do another podcast and do talk about that when it does get off of it. And also, we're approaching that new moon in Pisces, okay? That's going to happen on the 18th, actually one day before my birthday. And that's going to be a wonderful new moon in Pisces. And I will be doing a separate podcast on that. So anyway, if you did like the episode, like, share, comment, tell your friends, tell your people. I'm trying to raise my numbers here on the podcast, and I'm going to be doing these podcasts every week. Okay. So know that when you stay aligned and you stay aware, we let the stars illuminate our path. Okay. So have a great weekend, and I will talk to you soon.